Welcome back on the AM show as we get into our big stories. Now, how do you feel driving long distances and having to contend with illegal and indiscriminate speed ramps? I've encountered some of those. Now, not only will it be frustrating, but also motorists are put in harm's way. So what's the way forward in dealing with the illegal speed ramps posing a threat to road safety? We'll be hearing from stakeholders, our guests this morning. Kwame Kodua Etiahene. He is head of communications at the National Road Safety Authority. We also have engineer Emmanuel Laye Odai, Greater Accra Regional Director of the Ghana Highways Authority, and also joining the conversation, engineer Abdullahi Mahama, a civil engineer. But we've been out and about. We've been looking at some of these illicit, illegal speed bumps or speed ramps on some of our major routes. This is what we put together.
It was a pleasant ride through the countryside until the constant slams into potholes stole my joy and eventually turned this journey into a nightmare. Many of the roads in Bole Bamboy are riddled with potholes. Even if you're wearing a seatbelt, the road forces you to dance. Attempts by some locals to control excessive speed by some drivers piqued my interest. Residents had built sand mounds to act as speed ramps. According to Isaac Bamunye, who spoke on behalf of the residents, too many people have died here.
We are putting up this speed ramp because anytime we have been observing an accident here. That is why we are putting up. Just 3 weeks ago, one of our father lost his life through this road accident. That's why we are putting up the speed ramp. So we are calling for the government to come and support us. Okay. If not, this our community, things are going bad.
There were 4 of such mounds on the same stretch. However, the downpour had washed away their efforts. But residents say they have a plan.
So our plan is that we are just contributing some small coins so that we can buy cement and other things, so that we can put up, we can get some cement and then we also make it in the proper way.
When asked how oncoming vehicles could be warned to take precaution, here's what Isaac said.
So the first thing we are doing, we just pass some leaves and then we put on the road so that any vehicle come in will know that there's something happening here, so that they reduce the speed and then that's the for now.
The situation here appears to be symptomatic of a bigger road safety concern, the conundrum of ramps. Whereas this is designed to control speed and save lives, motorists are concerned about how this tool is being deployed and its adverse effect on night driving.
And so that is the situation we have to grapple with. And I use, on my own route, I encounter some of these from time to time. What are the hazards they pose and what should we be looking forward to? How should they be regulated? We have all the right authorities to interact with this morning. But let me start with you, Engineer Mahama, on this beat. When it comes to these speed ramps that are, or speed humps that are all over major routes across our country, a lot of them illegal. What have you, from your experience, seen as far as that matter is concerned? Do you see these from time to time? How dangerous are they?
Well, let me say a good morning to my special guys on the line, and good morning to your cherished viewers. On a lighter note, when you are going to interview me and I have my mentor on the line, Engineer Emmanuel Odai, I uneasy. I feel uneasy because he's one of my bosses who has taken me through the mail over the years for like 12 years now. So good morning, special greeting to Engineer Odai. I've come across a lot of these speed humps. Recently, I complained about the ones from Mankesim all the way to Takrady. I could count over 40 speed humps on the Mankesim stretch to Takrady. And I don't know how the supervision was done. A lot of them are so huge in size, very uncomfortable to even drive across them when you get to those locations. Sadly, most of them did not have the adequate warning or information signs prior to getting to the exact location. What happened is that I witnessed a lot of them had been damaged as a result of accidents. The information that you need before you get to the speed hump was missing. And so myself, I felt some of them when I actually came across them in some curves suddenly. So it was not comfortable at all. So what I think that the authorities may have to do is to put their men on the roads and then identify where we have this missing adequate information signs so that we will not be counting our losses at the end of the year, where a lot of vehicles will suddenly be confronted with these speed humps when they meet them on the road. And almost all the ones I counted, over 40 of them on this highway, there was no reflectors on them. Some of them were so harsh that it looked like the road itself. So even during the day, it was difficult to be able to identify or be able to identify that these are speed ramps and it's not part of the road carriageway. I mean, the main asphalt lane. And so it was not comfortable. I felt there was a lot of things that were not being done by authorities who are actually in charge of those. And you know, the Ghana Highways Authority has what we call the area managers. All the areas from the highways in Ghana, where an area manager's jurisdiction ends, the next area manager jurisdiction starts from there. So the whole stretch of the highways are within some hands. And if they are doing proper monitoring and evaluation, and they give adequate information to the higher officials, then maybe the only reason why we will not be seeing some of these adequate information signs on the road is because of funds. But that notwithstanding, I have proposed several times that whenever these vehicles knock down these road furnitures, most of the time the police would come and test the vehicles, and then after testing the vehicles, they clear the vehicles, and then the vehicles are taken away if they are not badly damaged to go and repair them.
Right.
But it is important that when these vehicles knock down public facilities such as these road furnitures, the police should not just end there. After testing the vehicles, they have to report to the right authorities who are in charge of this furniture so that the insurance will take its bits. Because we cannot allow vehicles to be damaging these hard-earned cash facilities which are put along the highway to help to reduce accidents. And when these things happen, the police do not go ahead to get these things resolved.
Okay, so thank you for your preliminary comments. Let me bring in Engineer Odai. You are with the Ghana, the Greater Accra Regional Highways Authority. I'd like to find out from you, first of all. I want to know from each one of you, do you encounter these illicit speed humps from time to time? Around where have you encountered them? I'll start with you, Engineer Odai.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to the other listeners. All that I'm saying is that we, as Ghana Highway Authority,
No.
We
Engineer
work
Odai,
hand in hand.
before you get into that, I'd just like to find out from you. Have you personally encountered any of these that you know are illegal? Have you encountered them on any stretch? Because I encounter them all the time. In fact, right in Abilinkbe, from that turn before you get to the taxi rank way up ahead, there's one. When you use the turn towards Aquatech, there's another one that just sprang up. They just spring up anyhow. So I'd just like to know, do you encounter them from time to time?
Yes. Yes, we have several of them. And that's why I wanted to talk about what we as Ghana Highway Authority or the road sector, we are supposed to do. We as an agency cannot do the enforcement. The enforcement has to come from the police. So like we have rightly said, it is an illegal speed hump or what you, yes. So once we are using the word illegal, it means the enforcement must come in. We have several of them. At a point, when I was in Cape Coast, the regional commander told me that when I told him it's illegal, he was surprised to know that those ones that they've been doing are illegal. Why? Because he thought maybe if you want to construct the speed hump or the speed calming device, we bring in this, what do we call it, the soil, the gravel material or whatever material they want to use first, just to alert drivers that something is going to happen there. But we surprised, sometimes these things remain there time on end. Then I say, yes, that is very true. It's very, very illegal. And they are supposed to arrest the people, or even sometimes they have to touch the assemblyman. And once the assemblyman is touched, we know the people who did it, and they have to remove it. Because it is not good for the road users. So it rather poses a lot of danger to road users than to, because of what we call the first timers. There are people who are using the road for the first time, and maybe you have a very good end, then suddenly you bump into this speed hump. So we have a lot scattered all over the country. It is not only in Accra. If you go to Bamboy, the Kintampo, it's all over the country. It's indiscriminately happening. So it's true. We see them all the time.
Now, you say they are everywhere, but, almost littering the length and breadth of our country. Just how dangerous are these ones? Because for me, as a driver, if you do not see these ahead of time, or if you use that stretch, but let's say a week ago, you knew there was no speed hump or ramp at a certain place, and all of a sudden you're coming at a certain speed, and you notice all of a sudden that they are there, it could be fatal. It could be dangerous. Just how dangerous are these situations?
It's very, very dangerous and then fatal. It can cause a lot of accidents. Like you rightly said, in the morning you pass through a road, in the evening you are passing, and then we have these things there. Normally, we have what we call the sight distance. It should be about 200 meters, not that is on the main road. If you have to see 200 meters. If it is not within that length, then it is dangerous. But what we are seeing is that it comes with signage. So if the people are doing this without the necessary signages, then what it means is that they are endangering the public. And that is why we are saying it is illegal. When we want to do it, we have to legally do it. We have different forms, like the speed humps, we have the speed tables. There are areas that we even have to narrow the road, or we put a gate there so that it will calm drivers. So it is very, very dangerous. And it is often, drivers are supposed to obey traffic signs. Basically, we have the triple E's that we talk about. That's education, enforcement, and engineering. For education, you see the road signs, and motorists, before you get your license, that's every driver before you get your license, you must be able to identify road signs and be able to interpret what you see on the road, as far as education is concerned. And here, what do we see? We see drivers speeding in towns. And I don't know, the measures that are put in place is not deterrent enough. So they continue to do it. Now, the enforcement, we are supposed to have, what do you call it, the cameras, the speed cameras, and then the red light cameras.
Right.
Which will record this, which we're supposed to record this speed, those the drivers speeding, and they can be punished for that. But what do we see? We don't have all these things around. When it comes to the engineering, yes, we have the ones that has been engineered. Those ones are okay because maybe we have a school, we have a hospital, some facility that we think people driving there will endanger them. So those ones are there. That's the engineering part.
I get the point you're making. Let me quickly come to Kwame Kodia-Etuahene, Head of Communications with the National Road Safety Authority. You know, it gets interesting because, again, just one stretch on the top of my mind. When you go past, is it the Ghana Integrity Initiative, okay, and then you're heading towards Aquatic. When you take that left turn, there are 3 official ramps back to back, about 20 meters apart. Now, after those 3, when you get right into the bend, the curve, which is less than 100 meters from there, in fact, it is right in the curve. So if you are not careful, if you don't know that route well, because this just sprang up about 2 weeks or so ago, about 3 weeks ago, you would, just run over it and your tires, your shocks, anything could happen. Interestingly, after that one in the corner, less than 20 meters away, there's another official one. So you ask yourself, those who came and placed this there, what exactly the thinking is. For you, why is this illegality being perpetrated? But on the other hand, Mr. Etuahene, there are those communities where people tend to speed, whether with motorbikes or vehicles. In such instances, what do community members do? And if they have to apply legally for speed ramps to be placed there, how long will it take? What is the process to follow?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to the viewers and the other panelists. I think that, first of all, a point must be made that in areas where we have found the illegal speed ramps sprung up, in fact, in 9 or 8 out of 10 instances, it is often, you notice that it is an area.
I didn't quite catch that. You say 8 out of 10 is what?
I'm saying that in 8 out of 10 of such locations, the evidence would normally be that the inhabitants would have recorded a knockdown.
Right.
So it is often the case that they take, quote and unquote, they take the law into their own hands to resolve a risk that they live with. So even though we have posted speed limits and drivers qualified and licensed ought to know, even in the instances or in cases where the speed limits have not been posted, a driver ought to know that in an urban environment, you may not be able to do 50 or in some cases 30 or 20 kilometers. They overlook these best practices and regulations and speed. So it has always been the case, or mostly been the case, that when these communities take to the preemptive action, when you go back, it is often the case that they'll tell you that over the last week or 2 or 3 or over the last 1 month, we've had a number of knockdowns or near misses necessitating these actions. I mean, that said, it doesn't justify that. And to the question you asked, I mean, where you find the necessity for a speed ramp, the road infrastructure belongs to an agency. and I believe Engineer Odoy with the road agency. The road infrastructure, I mean, it is their property. And so if you find a need for an improvement, you need to use your local leadership, community leaders, to make a request. And it will be assessed. And once it is assessed and considered necessary, I think there are cases where they act to provide the remedy. So that's where we are. And a little concern I may have is that, yes, even though these illegal speed ramps may be illegal and you require the police to act. With the greatest of respect, I think that the owners of the road, being the road agencies, cannot also look on. I mean, to say that without a complaint or an enforcement by the police, the agencies wouldn't do more, would also be problematic. So if I'm in charge of a road infrastructure, and it is obvious to me that some additions, but illegal activities is taking place. At the very least, you could also act by either lodging a complaint or, because without it, sometimes it's difficult when you interact with the police. Without it, sometimes it's difficult for the police to also discern which one is legal and illegal, and whether the said speed ramp has been sanctioned by the relevant local road representative or not. On our side, I think from last year, and I agree with you, and I wish to confirm, as other speakers have done, that, I mean, it's a common occurrence. We all use the road. We experience it. We live with these vices on a daily. It is very uncomfortable, and we experience the harsh reality that comes with it, especially on networks that are unusual. Run into a road network which is virtually new to you, and if you are not very diligent, you might run into some difficulties.
So it's interesting, all of these things you mentioned, but...
so last year, I think year we brought this issue to the attention of the road agency, and under the leadership of the Minister of Roads, a team was put together to begin to take down the illegal speed ramps on our major highways.
Right.
So some work is being done, except to say that I'm unable to report on the status, how many have been taken down over the period and what's the plan for.
But you see, that tends to be the problem. Some work is being done, but we can't quantify the work. We don't know where these have been taken off. We don't know how many of them have been cleared. It makes appreciating the effort difficult.
So I would encourage that. I have just said there are quite a number of duty bearers.
Right.
And fortunately for us, the Ghana Highway Authority, urban roads, feeder roads are responsible for the road infrastructure. I've given you a hint of what is being done. I would respectfully encourage that maybe you draw them into the conversation so that they could give you the numbers.
Right. Let me come to Engineer Odai. You're with the Ghana Highways Authority. Pointed question. Now, you told me earlier that when they are legally put together, there are signs that are supposed to be there, whether blue or red. But from what we see, even with the legitimate ones, there often are no signages ahead of them. That is the first point to be made. And I get this message coming in from a viewer who says, in some instances, there are no red signs of a bump ahead. Why won't they use reflective paint on the sides of the bumps or ramps to make them visible at night? How do you address these two issues? Because I've gone by legitimate ones, no signages. And how do you find the second one as well? Maybe reflective gear somewhere to make them more visible? You would have to unmute, Engineer Odai. We're not getting anything you're saying.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It comes in so many forms. Sometimes it is under construction, and where it has come to completion, then before we take over, the contractor would have to put the signages before the contractor will be paid. Now, sometimes you see these concrete ones that you think it is legal, but it is equally illegal because some residents or community decides on their own, and before you say jack, they have put it there. We can't be everywhere at every time. So you use a road maybe this week on a way, the next 2 weeks you come, there is one there. Sometimes we report this to the police, but getting the people to remove it then becomes an issue. We have a lot of problems that we encounter when it comes to these speed humps. Now we have this fisherman rope that they use everywhere. Some will nail iron rods onto the road, then eventually will create potholes on the road. Sometimes those who do the speed humps don't do it very well, and then you see potholes all over. So yes, there are some with reflectors, others without, some with the signages that we can see. But
about how many of them have reflectors, so that at night, especially for people who aren't conversant with those routes, they can see that there's something ahead. Can you give me a percentage?
We have the road safety section of Ghana Highway Authority. I don't have I'm not in the office right now. Otherwise, I would have just referred and give it to you. But on the one that has been engineered comes with all these facilities. So basically, that's what I can tell you for now.
So, in other words, we don't have much data. You're suggesting that you have this data, all of it, but you're not in your office, and so you can't give it to us. Does that mean that if we reached out to you later, after the show, for example, you'd be able to give us all of that data concerning the stretches that have these signages, concerning those that have the reflective, systems or lighting at night and all of that? Can you confirm that for us?
Yeah, as far as the trunk roads are concerned, yes, we can, because usually we do the inventory every year on these facilities. So yes, we can do that.
Engineer Mahama, so here's an interesting bit. Even on newly constructed roads, we're seeing these happening. I just get some information, for example, that the Jasikan Dodo Pepesu Road, the ramps are black. They are very dark, and at night you'll run into them despite the early signs that you see. So in other words, there are some signages, but some of them are so dark that you can't even see them. You see a sign that there should be something ahead of you, but before you realize, because they are not visible, you ran into them. And you know what that does for your car over time. How do we deal with this? Digesting what Mr. Chiahene and Engineer Odai have said so far.
Well, some of the speed ramps are done with asphalt. Engineer Odai stated categorically clear that before you get to the exact location, there are adequate signages to alert you. So once those signages are missing, that is where you are confronted with such a problem. Now, when Etuahino was speaking, he made mention of the fact that sometimes you don't see, somebody gave you, I think, a text message or whatever, that you don't see these signages there. Like I told you before, when I started with my initial submission, I said, these signages are always installed when proper engineering is done. The Ghana Highway Authority has a whole safety division. Before a road is actually handed over to government, an inventory is taken about safety. And all the speed humps have adequate information signs. Now, I told you again that once these vehicles are involved in accident and they damage some of this road furniture, it's only proper that when the reporting is being done at the police, they need to capture these facilities that have been damaged and then they report to the agencies so that the insurance bit will be taken into consideration.
Right.
But like Engineer Jordan was saying, if maybe you just use a road about a month ago and you have all the signages there, somebody is just a first-time user, and he doesn't see, you see, before you get to the exact location, you spoke about the red signage and then the blue one. The red sign is telling you that you are approaching the location of the speed hump. And the blue one tells you that you are exactly at the location. Now, when you use some of these roads in Accra, some people have come there and they are putting a lot of other adverts. You see billboards, small signage for directions, actually impeding the vision of the actual speed furniture. And the assemblies also have to start working because these adverts are not sanctioned or approved by the Ghana Highways Authority.
Right.
These permits go through the assembly and they ensure that the signage are put at locations where it will be visible. However, if the assembly is not aware or the process has not been taken and you see signages blocking the road furniture, automatically the assembly ought to do the needful and removing those signages from the said location so that at least people would have a lot of vision. And some of these speed humps, with time, they wear off. So no matter the reflector that actually plays on them, periodically, the Ghana Highways Authority or the urban roads have to come and then do what we call maybe their routine maintenance and then get them reflecting again. So that at least when you are driving in locations like this, you'll be able to have adequate information before you approach the speed ramp.
Right. I think it would also be good to give us some education on the different types because there are the rumble strips, those that, yes, you would feel that rumble when you go over them. There are those that you can't go over like that. You have to necessarily slow down a lot more. So there are the street ramps or humps. There are the rumble strips and all of that. But I'm getting people, and this is something I can corroborate, I'm getting people send me messages that the strips have white paint, which are not reflective, not necessarily reflective, and that as for the rumble, the bumps, they don't have them at all. In fact, one of the videos we just played, you would see it there. It looks black, almost as though it were one with the road. Imagine what would happen at night. What are the differences and what should be done to better the situation?
Before I speak to that, you see, if we decide to listen to every community's complaint, then at a point in time, almost every 10 meters, there should be a speed ramp or a speed table. Motorists are supposed to ensure that there's a common sense. Any driver who has acquired a legal driving license ought to know where to speed and where not to speed, because every junction has a different parameter. Now, when you're on the Kumasi Road, for instance, at Tichamante, the community is just by the roadside. That's the highway, an express road. But almost every now and then, when we are there, we have to force drivers to slow down with all the information signs. 500 meters away, you are told that you are approaching a town. 200 meters away, you are told you are approaching a rumble strip. 100 meters away, you are given adequate information. But the vehicles still speed with the speed of light. So it's a two-way situation. Ghana Highways Safety Division is doing their bit. Drivers ought to do their bit. When the drivers actually decide to use the signages well, or in an event where we don't even have the signages and you are in a town and you are doing 80 kilometers per hour, something ought to be done right. Something is actually wrong with that driver. So now let's look at the types we have. The rumble strip, like we said, the ones you see them like those strips. The second one you see those ones around the Kaswa stretch to Bujumburam, the speed tables. Those ones are like 10 meters wide. In fact, one of the most comfortable ones I've seen, where you go on the speed table, you drive, and then you come down. Okay, those ones are commonly seen on the highways. Now, with all this being done, the number of speed ramps or humps that we have on the highway or on our roads also aggravates the extent of deterioration of our roads. Because if you look at it, most of the time, at both approaches of the speed ramps, you see potholes developing. It's because of the sudden stoppages and going across it and then hitting the other side of the road with that weight. So in the proposal, I've seen that some of the speed humps, the approaches are being done with rigid pavement, like maybe a 50-meter or 40-meter stretch of pavement blocks or concrete, so that at least when you are stationed there before you go across the speed ramps, will not be creating the potholes that we see on the road. But these are the basic things that you have to do. All Drivers right. ought to be responsible as well on our highways, because a lot of the highways that we have constructed, in the bad state, you don't encounter accidents.
Right.
The new one that we have adequate information, we encounter a lot of accidents. But let's ensure that, like I said, this issue about the police always being at the accident scene and reporting, taking notes of everything that has been damaged, should not just test the vehicles and allow the vehicles to go. That's why most vehicles are insured. Almost all vehicles are supposed to be insured, so that when they damage these facilities, the insurance will come and replace them with the advice or with the consultation of the Ghana Authority.
So Engineer Mahama, I want each one of you to just get 30 seconds to deliver your final remarks, and we shall end this conversation. But I just felt compelled to put out this data. When you look at the IMF data, an IMF blog, it talks about speed bumps. And did you know the world's slowest roads are found in the poorest countries, presenting another obstacle to economic development? So they have a chart here. And if you look at mean speed ranges per kilometer hour, you would find that in the developed economies, North America, the US, Canada, and other places, they are looking at speeds per hour of 91 to 110 kilometers. In those that are slightly less developed, 76 to 90 and the rest. Do you know that in Africa, most of our countries, including Ghana, you are looking at 30 to 60 kilometers per hour? How does that strike you, and what are your final comments? I'll come back to you, Engineer Mahama. 30 seconds. The rest of you, 30 seconds, and it's a wrap.
Education and awareness. The drivers who are in the North Americas have a lot of information, or they have a lot of punitive measures when they actually get involved in some of these things. The cameras are missing in Ghana. We need to ensure that we have a lot of these cameras that some of your media houses have started war against indiscipline on our roads, so that we can get, it's just the indiscipline bit which is actually a problem. And then the first time user on any road has to make sure that he drives within a certain acceptable speed, that in case he is confronted with anything along the road, any obstacle, he can have adequate time to avert any accident on the highway.
Engineer Mahama, so grateful for your time. Let me hear from Kwame Echiahene. Your concluding thoughts in some 30 seconds.
I think I would like to reiterate the comments of Engineer Mahama. And a lot of issues could be resolved if drivers were patient to drive within the posted speed limits. That way, we could also calm the communities from deploying these unengineered illegal ramps. But on the other hand, I would also seize the opportunity to call on the road agencies to improve upon their monitoring and inspections routine and do the best they can to assist road users take down these ramps that are illegal and pose a measure of threat on the lives of road users.
Right. And for you, Engineer Odai, your parting comments. You may have to unmute for us, Engineer Odai. I do not know whether we've...
Yeah, thank you very much.
Right.
All I would say is that it's education, education, and education. If we don't educate the people, we can do whatever we want to do and we will not get results. We must educate the public, and then all the agencies, the police, our agencies, and then the stakeholders, we have to come together and know that life is precious, and therefore we have to protect it. So safety, before any engineer does any design, safety is paramount.
Right.
It's the first thing we consider. Yes, so we are saying education, education, education. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Someone sent me a message at the last minute that none of you spoke about a lack of resources and human intervention. But that is a discussion for another day. Thank you so much, Engineer Abdullahi Mahama, civil engineer, together with Kwame Kodia Etiahene, head of communications at the National Road Safety Authority. Also, Engineer Emmanuel Laye Odai, Greater Accra Regional Director, Ghana Highways Authority. We're so grateful for your time, gentlemen. Thank you. Now, having had that conversation, there are two major issues we're going to be looking at together with other discussions we're having. Those over 5 million, as some would put it, over 9 million SIM cards that risk deactivation from tomorrow, as well as the other bit to do with the Ashanti regional head of the NSS. All of those discussions still ahead on the AM show. Do stay.